Right. Hello, everybody. Come on in. Get comfortable. I'm Erin. I'm here with my pal Cory. You might know Cory. This is Cory Sterling. I'm not going to spend much time introducing him, but I'm going to let him introduce himself. But I do want to tell one quick Cory anecdote while people are filing in. Cory, I don't know if you remember this, but you created some beautiful content for our Primal Health Coach Institute certification course, teaching some of the ins and outs of legal stuff for health coaches and health professionals to learn. You obviously remember doing that. You did a great job. In the videos that you sent us, you were drinking a specific kind of juice. Do you remember what it was?
It wasn't yerba mate. It was a juice and it wasn't tea.
Correct.
Holy smoke. So
Okay,
I'm
anybody
drinking.
who's in the participant list who knows what kind of juice Cory was drinking, you type it in the chat, but don't, Cory, you can't look. It was a very specific kind of juice. And I'm dying to know if you still drink this juice. Mark nailed it.
Yeah, wow. Um, okay, yeah, onion juice. I think for me, I look at the onion more as a tea than as a juice.
Interesting. Okay. Because I did spend a little bit more mental energy than I'd like to admit, just wondering how you juiced an onion and how much crying was actually involved in that process.
Okay, so it's more like I think it's boiled like you boiled the onion to extract the liquid from it. But
Okay.
I'm also gonna there was someone who had prepared it for me. So at the time, if it's onion juice or tea, yeah, onion skin tea is a real thing. Thanks, Christine. Now that not everyone's just laughing at me, but I lived in a small Brazilian beach town where I was kite surfing, and there's a local woman who makes like teas and tinctures from all of the local plants. She's lived there forever. And maybe I had a cold at the time, but she's a big advocate for onion tea, as we call it, also called onion juice. Um, but so it's from her.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Okay. So it was a tincture you were using because you weren't feeling well. I thought this was maybe some kind of health, some new health paradigm that I hadn't heard of. But did
It
it
I totally recommend it if anyone's interested. I still would like it, even when I'm healthy, I make it, or I drink it even when I'm not sick. So I don't know. I'm sort of like, if it's healthy, give it to me. I'll drink it. I don't ask a lot of questions.
okay.
So I'm just like into trying everything.
Okay. Well, it was just amusing because I just to close the anecdote when I was reviewing the videos to put it inside our course. That's kind of how you started. You sort of cheersed us with your onion juice, and it I found it very amusing. So here we are, Cory. You are our guru for the next hour. No pressure.
Yeah,
We love learning from you though, because you are a lawyer
it's true.
and you are a heart-centered health practitioner as well, and you help people like us understand the laws and protect ourselves with them. So I'd love for you to just talk to us about what you do.
I would be happy to. Thank you. And Aaron, I have to say, it's the microphone and your voice, but I feel like I'm listening to like easy listening radio when you speak. I don't know if anyone else in the group feels that way as well. But it's like I sort of like feel like I'm like driving on Highway 11. I'm like, wow, this is comfortable. Like this is what a trip. Where's my onion juice so I can drink some? But thank you so much for having me, and nice to see everyone and to be here. So yes, I am a lawyer and I work predominantly with health and wellness professionals. A lot of those are health coaches and yoga teachers and Pilates teachers. And it's really, really cool. And I'm super passionate about it. And I've done it for about 7 years. We've worked with over 1,100 clients, and there's a lot of different story. I think I just love the story element to it, really. Like today, I had a whole bunch of calls with new clients, and a lot of them are in this health coaching space, or this sort of vacuum between different industries where there are regulations, right? Health coaching is sort of unique in the sense that it's not regulated. So what are the rules, and what can I do and what can I not do, and what should my relationships look like? But the most inspiring thing to me is that everybody wants to build a community or be the difference of health in the world and be an agent for promoting health and promoting wellness. So the fact that I get to be a lawyer and support them and chat with them and advise them is really the coolest job ever. And yeah, and it's very nice to be here. And I hope to share as much information that's practical and helpful to everyone who made it on the call today.
Yes, on the call and watching the replay as well, because we're going to send
Yeah,
this
the
replay
replay.
out. So anybody has to jump off, don't worry. We're going to send out a replay. And I do want to mention that Cory's going to walk us through like breaking down exactly what you need to know to protect yourself legally as a health coach. For those of you who are private health coaches, we do have this for you inside the course. And we have a special sort of little promo discount fun thing we're offering. Cory's giving away a health coach online course legal bundle.
Yeah.
Big deal. I'm going to pop that link into the chat here in a second, and we'll email the link around if you're watching on the replay. So love to hear, Cory, that you're on the phone with people like us almost every day, connecting with us and helping us understand how we can help it. Because you kind of touched on this, like we're an unregulated health and wellness profession.
Mm-hmm.
And the word unregulated, I think, is confusing. I think it's confusing for health
Cool.
coaches, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, do we want to be regulated? Is regulation good? Are we naughty because we're unregulated? Do you have anything to say about that? What does it mean to be unregulated or regulated?
Well, I would prefer to be unregulated than regulated, if I had to choose. But let's just not even use these terms, and let's just say what it is. So, health coaching. Let's start with medical practices. So we're talking about doctors. We're talking about registered nurses. We can be talking about dietitians. All of these different traditional institutions of medical or pseudo-medical services that are provided. Before people were allowed to offer support or practice in those particular areas, they would have to get some form of certification from a board or a governmental organization that said, okay, you've done all of the things that a dietitian needs to do, and you went to school and you passed the test, and you have to follow by all of the rules that we say of what you can do and what you cannot do. And here you go. Now you can put these letters beside your name, and now you're regulated. So in that context, what does regulation mean? It means that you have a very specific scope of work about what you're allowed to do. It's organized and overseen by some form of institution or formal government body that makes the rules. And in order to be able to hold yourself out, a law is called a representation, to hold yourself out in a particular way with certain qualifications, i.e. RN, MD, whatever else it is. If you're a dentist like DDS or things like that, you have to follow the rules of the organization. So that's regulated. And usually, like if let's say in the province of Alberta, if the registered nurse associations of Alberta, if they make a big change, then there's a whole process of voting and passing information, passing bills or new rules, and that's how it works. So that's what regulation is. So it's regulated. Cool, you're holding yourself out as this, and as such, these are the rules that you have to follow. Unregulated are for industries that do not have governing bodies that oversee the activities of those particular things. So if we just for fun, I know that at Primal Health, everyone gets an awesome education and is super informed and practical training and great resource and all that stuff. But let's all just think about Instagram, right? And all those people who are on Instagram who are doing pseudo-medical things like giving you advice about food or how you want to lose weight or whatever it is that you want to do. A lot of the times those people are operating in spaces that maybe they're like pseudo-medical services they're offering, but they're completely unregulated, like no qualifications except that they have 70,000 followers and no education and no background. And they don't really technically need it because there's no one that's stopping them from saying, hey, you're actually not allowed to do this. So they just go out and they're like, cool. Whereas if you were a registered nurse and you went on Instagram and you had a page of, what was his name? Greg Fokker. Greg Fokker was a nurse, wasn't he? From Meet the Parents.
Yes, he was.
Cool. So Greg Fokker makes a Instagram page for all of his nursing information. If he does something he's not allowed to do or talks about something he's not allowed to talk about, he could lose his license. Whereas, Toe Tapper 71 on Instagram, who's an influencer and whatever, goes to the keg for dinner. I don't know what these people do. That person can say anything, and there's no regulations, that there's no risk for them to lose anything. So that's like, are we clear on the distinction between regulated and unregulated before we get into the risks of each?
I feel clear. If anybody's unclear, pop it into the chat. Pop it. Why are you always popping into the chat? Just put it in the chat. So I'm with you. I feel like being unregulated is an all right place to be. Well, I don't know. Were you going to say more? I don't want to stop your train of
Yeah,
you're going to
sure.
say
I just want to make sure that we understand the distinction. So it's like you have qualifications and there's a governing board versus you're just doing your own thing and you're sort of offering sometimes pseudo medical or services that should require a qualification, but you don't have one. So the big risk and issue that you have to watch out for as a practitioner is that you don't want to be doing things that require a certification, right? So let's just throw out the buzzwords that's on everyone's mind: diagnose, treat, cure, medicine. You're not allowed to do anything that uses those words, because in order to use those words, you need to be part of a regulated industry and a regulated profession. So for health coaches, it's a very, very fine balance and a unique place to be, where you are not regulated. You're doing, like, sometimes maybe you're reviewing client blood work, like, they submit the blood work on their own and maybe you're reviewing it, or you're recommending different tools or probiotics or things that they can be using to optimize health. And how can you do that as best as possible without attracting the legal complications and the liabilities that come from having an unqualified practice? So I think that explains both. I don't really have an opinion on what I think is better. I think what I notice in some clients is some sort of wish that it was regulated, because they're just like, tell me exactly what I can do and what I can't do. Like, working with clients across different states or provinces is one of the most common questions that I have. And they're just like, oh, they're really torn. And I'm like, cool, like, we got your back. Use the documents. If a question comes up, hit me up. But these documents are based on all the experiences we've been with people who have done this before and who've been through this before and have had issues. And then other people love, like the cowboys love being unregulated, because it's like, cool, like, sort of no rules. Great. I'll, don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness. And it's interesting, I think, even from a human psychological standpoint, to see how different people approach the same situation.
Mm-hmm. See, the cowboys are kind of where I was leaning. On one hand, it sounds, like giddy up. It's a free for all if we're unregulated. However, we still have to operate in a professional conduct. There are still parameters that we really do need to, put around what we do. It can't just be the Wild West out there. So
Nor should it be. So
right.
it's a lot of what my job is. I'm sort of like the wrangler in some
Yeah.
cases, right? Where I'm like, okay, cool, like, you're not doing this. And I'll give you an example. Clients that want to, and this is the worst example, they have a medical background and they want to hold themselves out as a health coach with doctor in the title. Like, does everyone just see how counterintuitive that is? That's just something where I see that, where I'm like, absolutely not. I'm putting in an email written advice, like, you should not do this. You go off, if you want to be a cowboy or cowgirl, go off and do it. But as a lawyer, I've seen what happens when those sort of things take place. So I'm not an advocate at all for deliberately breaking rules. I think that what it really means to be an unregulated professional is there is an onus and a responsibility to be informed about what you really can do and what you can't do, and make sure that you have legal documents to reflect that. And then at that point, you've done everything that's in your power.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's talk about documents.
Yeah.
Let's dive in. We're going to proceed from here. We're unregulated health professionals. Even if you are watching this and you have come from maybe a regulated profession and you're toe dipping into health coaching, we're going to approach this from the perspective of the health coach who's an unregulated health practitioner. So, legal documents. What are these?
Legal documents. Wow. When you say it like that, it sounds heavy. We call them legal documents.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. On paper, it sort of looks the same, but in presentation, it's different. So essentially, what the legal documents are is they capture a moment in time. Yeah, jazz hands, thank you. Spirit fingers, if everyone remembers Bring It On,
Mhm.
I don't, sometimes I date myself with my movie references, but that's when I watch movies. Like I watched movies when I was 16. I don't really watch movies
Right.
anymore too much. Um, okay, so the legal documents are a memorialization of the intention of two people when they're working together. And the benefit of having it signed and executed is that A, you're either giving away certain legal rights or you're making a promise to do something or not to do something in the future. And in the event that there's an issue or someone makes a complaint about you or says that you misrepresented yourself or you said you were going to do something that you didn't, you have an objective document signed by parties which outlines what the intentions were when you started and where everything was at the beginning of the relationship. So in a really simple sense, what I always explain to my clients is when you're looking at if you want a practical way to understand the law, think about yourself and then think about all the different relationships that you have, right? So you have a relationship with your clients, you have a relationship with liability, you have online relationships, maybe people work for you, you have either contractors or employees, maybe you've got a business partner who would be maybe a shareholder, or maybe you're in a partnership. If you rent a space, you have a landlord, you're renting. So there's all these different relationships going on. And the goal is for each relationship to have a document which communicates your expectations openly and honestly and captures that when you started the relationship together, what your intentions were in working together or in protecting yourself or whatever it is.
Great. Okay. Love it. That's a nice high level description of legal documents.
Nice hands.
So, a question that I get asked a lot, and by the way, I get asked this question a lot as the coaching and curriculum director, and I work with our students on, getting trained, mentored, starting their businesses, but I don't have expertise around legal stuff. So that's why I'm so grateful that you're here if I didn't mention it. And so I think what freezes a lot of health coaches from starting is they don't know what they need when. What's the first thing I should
Yeah.
do? I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, half of them and the health coaches, this, start trying to design their logo. It's like quit spinning your wheels on that. But like in terms of legal documents protection, um, what's sort of the timeline? What's the first thing a coach should do?
Okay, well, the first thing is you should get everything in order before you begin the relationships, right? So you want everything ready so that before you're actually launching your website, launching your social media, working with your clients, you like automatically off the bat with those, you want the privacy policy done before, you want the waiver of liability done before, so that when they sign, you're onboarding them properly. You want the client service agreement done before, and then you want the health disclaimer done before. And the reason why it doesn't have to be a long time before, but there's a very important concept of law that's called duty of care.
Mhm.
And basically, duty of care means that you have a responsibility to make sure that no one gets injured or suffers damages by virtue of services that you provide. So the moment you start providing those services, even if you're doing it for free for your best friend, and probably your best friend's not going to sue you if something goes wrong, but I've seen crazy things. Anyways, the moment before you actually provide the services, that's when you should have the documents, because once you post the website, post the social media, launch the website, start seeing the client, start the project, that's when you need everything in place. So that's the answer to that question.
Right up
And
front.
yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Right up front. Okay, great. That's awesome to know. That's really useful to know. I think maybe what I'm just trying to think, and by the way, if you're watching this and you have specific questions, I don't want to just speak for you. If you're watching, please put your questions in. But just from what I've heard, sometimes coaches say, well, I don't even know what kind of business I'm going to do yet. I don't know how I help people yet. They haven't quite figured out their approach or, what the business is going to be called or look like or what they're going to do. Do they need that stuff settled before they can create, for example, a client service agreement?
There's to some degree, maybe yes, but and I know there's like a really, really good expression that's just slipping my mind, where it's like better done than perfect,
Yeah.
right? Something like that, where I see, and what are they also, something paralysis.
Analysis
Analysis
paralysis.
paralysis, where and I see this with clients a lot of the time, where they're awesome, but they're just like not putting it out there because like, oh, everything has to be perfect before I put it out there. And then, so to answer your question, legally, you want your agreements to reflect the relationships that you have. So if I have no idea what I'm doing, then it would be difficult to come up with a service agreement. But if I know, like, okay, I'm going to be coaching,
Mhm.
maybe I'm going to be doing some holistic nutrition, maybe I'm going to be doing some exercise, maybe I'm going to be doing some stretching. I don't know what it's going to be. And I know that I want to charge $60 an hour. Like, boom, there's your service agreement. Okay, each session is $60. You pay at the end of the session, and we may be doing one of the following things. Because a lot of the times in life and in business, you have to start doing something to realize what resonates with the community, what your clients actually want, what you love doing. And you could be spinning wheels forever just thinking, oh, maybe it'll be, but it's also like, I'm a big advocate of just like, just go, boom, it's there, make it happen. And yeah, and so I think that liability begins when you start offering the services, but you don't need to know everything that you're going to do to start offering the services. You just need to make sure that you're protected.
Amazing. Okay, that's great. That's really just good. That's good getting started advice, because health coaches do struggle to get started. So get started, have a rough idea of what you're going to do. I'm going to do some, maybe recipe guides or workout program, something like that.
Yeah,
And know that your business is going to change, grow, evolve, and then your documents will just change, grow, and evolve with you, right?
that's it. It's the same. It's also like, I can't tell you what I'm going to be doing in 6 months,
Right.
but I'm in the present moment. So like, I can do whatever I'm going to do today. And maybe tomorrow I have a to-do list of what I'm going to do tomorrow. But like in 6 months, I have no idea. And I think it's the same for coaches as they're building their business. Like I just did a yin yoga training. So
Hmm.
it's all about the flow and the chi and going with the flow and, allowing your business to take the direction. Maybe you're going to discover a niche that you had no idea you were ever going to work with, that is you're wildly passionate about and tremendously prosperous. And I hope that happens for all of us. But you just want to be protected, and then, oh, you need to change, cool, pivot. The most important thing also is just knowing the right professionals. Like, you've got Aaron, you've got me, we're both here for you. Like, just you build it, they'll come, and we'll support you with whatever happens along the way.
Yeah. You know, we were joking at the start of this conversation, and anybody who's gotten to know you through the content that you share knows that you do have a very yin sort of casual approach. And I think that's welcoming, quite frankly. And I really want to thank you for having that welcoming approach, approachable air, because there's so much panic. Health coaches are so panicked and afraid to start. And we don't want you to be afraid to start. You have to start. The world needs your help. So
Yes.
we've got Cory here to help make this part feel easy for you. And I, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, after having started a business and run one for 12 years, it was a great relief to have the legal documents handled. It felt to me like, okay, now I can do what I want to do. Like I have the parameters now. I know my own parameters. I know I've got my own little guardrails here. Now it's go time. So, and by the way, when I started my business 12 years ago, we didn't have a Cory. We didn't have a Cory, but now we do. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And what I always say, the two things that I always say is that, one, when I work with my clients, all they're doing is transferring all of their problems over to me.
Okay.
And I'm a specialist at dealing with the problems. Like, whatever whoever's watching, whatever you think is like super confusing and stressful, I've been through it so many times, and I actually love dealing with it. So for me, it's a lot of fun. And the second thing that I always say is, all I want is my clients to focus on is growing their business and offering the best services that they can.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
that's it.
Cool. So you mentioned a few documents. You mentioned policy, waiver of liability, client service agreement, health disclaimer. I know you spend probably every day of your life describing these to people, but if you wouldn't mind, would you describe them for us?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I did have a moment today. where I have a client with a Pilates studio who, like, I had to explain the basics of a waiver of liability. And every time I start, there's part of me that's like, time, 4,371 times that I've done this, but it's cool to be a specialist at something. So, and I chose it. So I also see that there's a question from Ansel, which we're going to get to after I go over the basics. So a privacy policy for all of us, just so we know, I'm not going to go into the details, but when you collect personal information from your clients, at law, you have to let them know what you're collecting, who you share it with, how you're using it, if they want to get it back, what the process is. And they're really, really boring, but they're really, really important. And everyone's probably thinking like, oh, I don't actually need this, or I went through something with a client whose business got hacked, small business client, not like a major corporation. All of the information compromised, a lot of private confidential information of people. And our last resort for defense is a privacy policy, and say, hey, when you signed up with us, this is what we told you could happen. This is who we share with. This is what happens in the event of a breach. So privacy policy in terms of service for your website are important. The waiver of liability is the one that prevents you from getting sued. So as a health coach, you have to be specific about what it is you do, how you do it, where you do it, what the risks are of people participating. If one of those risks materialize, how will their life be affected? And the key with the waiver is just being as specific as possible. So if you're doing Reiki and Tai Chi and nutritional advising and exercise and stretching and this and that, the waiver of liability has to cover all of those things.
Right.
Because the basic premise of a waiver is normally I'd be allowed to sue you, but because you were so clear in telling me what we're doing together and what could go wrong, and I agreed to participate and not hold you responsible, if something happens, I don't hold you responsible.
Yeah.
So that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then I'll just quickly go over two of the other ones. And I also want to chat about like online communities for health coaches, because that's a really big thing too. The service agreement is the relationship that you have with your clients. So that's things like payment, behaviors, expectations, cancellations, refunds. Scope of practice is a really big thing for service agreements for health coaches. So it's just like, hey, we're working together. This is what's up. This is who I am. This is what you're getting. This is what I expect of you. Do you guarantee results or not? If you do guarantee results, what does that look like? How specific is it? Everything related to the relationship with the client. And again, scope of practice is important because the number one complaint from clients will be some form of misrepresentation. Like, oh, I thought Erin really was a doctor, or I thought she really was qualified to make a food plan for me to help me with my type 1 diabetes or whatever it is. Hey, here's a copy of the signed service agreement. In paragraph 3, I told you this is what we'll not be doing together. Paragraph 7 listed my qualifications, so then there's no risk of misrepresentation. And I think, and then the last of like the 4 really, really key ones for health coaches is a disclaimer, a general health disclaimer. And that's like, not medical advice, seek a medical professional, not treating, not curing, not diagnosing. Like, nothing we're doing is medical. Go see a doctor. If you're unsure about any of this, or you have any questions, go run as fast as you can, or get in an Uber and go see a doctor. And then once that gets cleared, then we're happy to offer you a program to get to optimal health.
Yeah. Oh, I like how you put that. I like a health disclaimer. I really do. Like, you know what I like about it is like, I'm part of an allied team of people that can help you feel amazing. And so is your doctor. And, make sure you have a good relationship with them too. I love that. That's awesome. That's really, really great. So you said you wanted to talk about online communities.
Yeah,
We have a few
I
questions
do.
in the Q&A, but let's talk about this first. So talk about this.
Okay, so online communities, it's very, very trendy, sort of like onion juice. Also, by the way, like in 3 years, onion juice is going to be a big thing. And you'll be like, Cory was sort of a pioneer for onion juice. Just like, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That you'd be like, oh, I saw that guy talk about legal documents once before his onion juice company went public.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very trendy in the health coaching space to want to have online communities. So, okay, everyone's in a Facebook group or Mighty Networks or some form, and then we're all going to be there, and there's going to be a weekly call, and we share these resources, and we introduce professionals, and we talk about our problems and all these sorts of things. You have to be really, really careful about that. And it requires its own agreement, which is called an online community agreement. And what you have to be careful of is, coming back to this idea of duty of care, you're the one who's facilitating this whole conversation. So you're the one who's like, you're creating the space. It's like, think about if you own a space, think about it physically, and I invite everyone over, and maybe I'm not participating in everything that happens, but everything that's happening is physically happening in the space that I've organized and that I'm ultimately responsible for, and that I'm the owner of and receiving money for. If other, like the things you have to watch out for, like if other people who are not medical professionals make representations and they start giving each other advice, like you have to make, everyone signs an online community agreement, participant agreement. That's like, hey, you know what, unless it's a leader, then they're not qualified. You have to be careful with that information. Sharing confidential information in a group setting is also something that there's a lot of sensitivity around that. A lot of the issues have to do with also in the group space, discrimination, behavior, expectations, bullying. It would be so awesome if that stuff didn't exist and wasn't a real issue. But you know, bring a lot of human beings online into a space. I mean, online in person, but it's a real thing. And now discrimination and equality is so important in a legal perspective, and so like deeply inserted into our society, that not having provisions around that can be deemed negligent. Like, why didn't you have you know, a policy about how people have to treat each other, or what words they can use, or what behavior is acceptable, as like as maybe some, you know, whatever. That's a whole question of whether it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. As a lawyer, my job is to make sure my clients are protected, as well as like being able to kick people out. That's a really big things with online groups that I'm always dealing with clients, that like there's the one really annoying person who's making things really difficult and challenging for other people. So I wish it was as simple as, cool, like I'm building an online community and everything's going to be amazing. But in practice, it's different. And legally, I've just had so many experiences having to deal with so many different situations that it's more just like, use this document. If there's a problem, send me an email. We'll take care of it. Because like there's a lot going on. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. My mind is blown actually, because first of all, I think of some of the, like, for example, Facebook communities that I'm just a participant in. Maybe I'm like a fly on the wall, and there's like 80,000 people in these communities. There's one that I'm thinking of. It's a fasting community. And somebody will post a question like, I'm having XYZ medical issue. What should I do? And then commenters will come in and say, fast longer, fast shorter, multi-day fast, 3-week fast, 5 day. And it gets so endemic, like, or just inherent, I think, in like Facebook communities. And it never dawned on me until literally this moment that actually should be more controlled and organized as the owner of the group. So is this kind of new, this sort of thing?
Certainly the rise of online communities and the way that they function is like, that's a product of the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. Like 10, 11 years ago, I don't think it was as big as it is now, where now it's so big and so commonplace. But yeah, they're real issues, and it just takes something going really wrong for, you know, one person to learn a really difficult lesson, an expensive lesson, and have to close the group and deal with legal issues and get drawn into that whole process. So yeah, it's very real, but it all just comes back to it just comes back to the basic principles, where it's like, cool, I'm the facilitator for a group. Ultimately, I'm responsible for what goes on in that group. And you just have to be wary of that.
Okay. Yeah. So a question came in, and I have the same question, and it's like kind of into the weeds. But for example, in my business, I have a free group, which is ultimately like a marketing vehicle. Like, come hang out at my free group and, you know, hang out with me, and I'll do a weekly, whatever, live video. And then I have the group that is associated with my paid coaching program, which is like a closed group. But either way, both of those online groups should have their own like agreement. So the paid one, I make sense. It's a part of maybe the client service agreement. As part of, joining my coaching program, you're going to be enrolled in a Facebook group. And here's what, maybe we include but in a very open, free public forum where anybody can join and there's no guardrails around who can come in and who can't, who can post and who can't. Like, how do you execute that?
You mean you're just allowing people to enter without any?
Yeah.
Well, then, okay, then ideally you get everyone who's, in order to be a free participant, part of the onboarding is just that you click to agree bound to, like, you click to agree to be bound to the terms.
Okay.
And the online community agreement doesn't have to be different for both, for paid or non-paid. Remember, like, at law, paid versus non-paid is not nearly as big of a distinction as it is outside of law.
True.
Like, if I'm doing free health coaching versus paid health coaching, for me, it's a really big difference because one of them I'm getting money, one of them I'm not. That, like, to me, when I'm deciding, what flight to go on or where I can travel, that makes a big difference. The law says you have a duty of care to both. Maybe the standard of care is lower when it's free, but you have a legal responsibility to both parties. So what I would say is, like, the first and best look would be to always get some, like, it can just be like, click little box, like, hey, before we allow you in, you agree to be bound to the terms of this free open Facebook group, right? It could be even something like that. And just like this, we do not tolerate this. We reserve the right to ask you to leave, whatever, do not, please respect confidentiality. Speak to a medical professional before you act on anything that's shared in the group, things like that. So that's one way. Or also maybe you could just post, like, the rules at the top of the page. Because as a lawyer, usually my work is being a detective / telling a story about reasonableness.
Yeah.
So someone screws up and made a mistake. My job is to produce a version of a story that shows that they're the most reasonable version of a human being possible. Oh, well, at the top of the page, we listed our expectations and the rules and all these sorts of things. Then obviously someone say, like, well, I didn't see it or I didn't read it. And that's why when you have a signed contract, you eliminate all of that stuff. But if that's the best that you can do, it's sort of like a social media disclaimer, which is really important also. Like, you can't get everyone who goes to your profile to sign something, but you can have in your link tree a copy of a social media disclaimer.
Great. That's helpful. Very cool. So we'll get into some questions here, but I want to just come back around to this giveaway that you're doing. Do you have the details on this? I have the link. I'm going to post the link in the chat.
Please post. Yeah, please post the link. So what we have is we're giving away a package of documents, which is going to be awesome. And I believe that it has the privacy, the waiver of liability, the disclaimer, the service agreement.
Yep.
And I think that it also includes a social media disclaimer, an affiliate disclaimer, a media release, and an NDA.
Awesome.
So, and all of this is done through Law is Fun, which is a website that I started, which is a passion project of mine. So that's like the legal documents. It's not there's no lawyer-client relationship with Law is Fun, but it's quicker, it's simpler. You don't get the support of working with a lawyer, but you have the documents that our law firm drafted from all the experiences that we've been through. So so the package has basically everything that we've spoken about. It has one of each for everyone. Who's
very
involved.
Cool. I posted that link in the chat. We'll also include it in the email on this replay, and it's really cool. You kind of gamified it a little bit. So once you click the link, put your name in, it's going to give you all these options, gang, to share it around. And the more you share it, the more enters into the draw you get. It's very
Then we choose one lucky winner.
One lucky winner. That's right. Okay, so we got questions. Let's
do this.
So Tim up at the top asked a question. I don't know if you see that one. I'm creating an organization with a psychiatrist, nurse, and licensed clinical social worker. So 3 regulated people. We hope to use coaches on the back end. Does this need to be a separate organization as to not to create exposure for these licensed individuals and owners? That's a good question. Like a mix.
That is a good question. Thanks, Tim. Okay, so you're creating an organization with all of these practitioners. I'm just working out ideally in my mind how all of it works. Each of them have their own different type of relationship. So what you would have is you'd want one waiver of liability that covers all of these different activities that are taking place. So with a social worker, with a nurse, and a psychiatrist, these are all the different things that we're doing. If any of, these are the activities, whatever the risks are, however those materialize, you agree not to hold us responsible. You'd also have a service agreement that probably, it depends, like if you go with a membership for anyone who uses the organization, or if it's just individual, each one would want to have a service agreement, and then the individual service agreements would outline the scope of services. But you could even just have a master agreement that outlines, like, when working with our psychiatrists, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Yeah, got the whole alphabet right there.
Yeah.
When you're working with our nurse, this is what we're doing, this is what we're not doing. And I'm not going to run through the alphabet again, but I did prove that I know the alphabet, which
Yeah.
yeah.
And you pronounce it the American way because you said Z instead of Z. I'm going to let it go though.
I'm yeah, yeah. That's who I am.
Yes.
But I still say a boot.
Okay, that's a neat idea. So that this master agreement where there's sort of like a section for every possible practitioner that the client or patient might encounter, because in this kind of an allied model, that the patient client is kind of bouncing around from practitioner to practitioner, might be with a license, might be with an unlicensed. So that's a pretty cool way of approaching it, I think.
Yeah, you want to, and also at the end of the day, A, the most important thing is you're protected, and B, the second most important thing is that the process is streamlined and simple.
Yeah.
So one agreement, cool. When you're working with our psychiatrist, when you're working with our nurse, when you're working with our social worker, this is everything that's going on. Maybe you're doing health coaching outside of that. So you need to specifically say, hey, and when we're doing social worker related services, health coaching, it's not regulated. And because again, the biggest issue, one of the issues most common with health coaches is wearing different hats.
Mm-hmm.
So you just want the documents to be super clear, like, hey, if this situation comes up, this is the hat that we're wearing. And if this situation comes up, this is the hat that we're wearing, so that they can't allege that there was any misrepresentation. And so separate it doesn't need to be a separate organization. I think the other question that comes up for me is like ownership structure and compensation, which probably, Tim, is a more in-depth question. But is it a partnership? Are they equal shareholders in a company, or are they, is it a multi-member LLC? So there are some things to organize and iron out, but basically you can find simple ways to get it done. And most of your the truth also is, like, most of your clients aren't really going to read the agreements.
Yeah, true.
Like they're just not. And so then if a problem comes up, you're protected and you've done everything properly and you've given them an opportunity to read it.
Yeah, I will, just to kind of close loop, and Tim, like, let us know if there's any follow-up questions, but these organizations, just so that, like, maybe, Cory, you probably have your finger on this pulse, but these kinds of, again, multimodal organizations are becoming more and more common. This sort of, again, functional allied approach to health and wellness, we're seeing more of them come online. We know at Primal Health Coach a lot of doctors who are leaving conventional medicine to start these clinics that are more interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
So it's a great question to ask anybody who's watching this that's in that realm. Cory's gotcha.
Yeah, I see it as a trend as well. Specifically, where I see it a lot is a lot of physiotherapists want to offer alternative services as well. So
Right.
Everything's sort of like blending into one whole thing.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. All right. Then we had Ansel's question. So, do you provide legal services to coaches worldwide?
Yeah. So we do. The way that it works, and I've worked with health coaches in Australia and New Zealand and South Korea and Japan and a couple in Europe, and all over the place. So the major implications when it comes to international stuff is, one, you want to be at best industry practices and best industry standards, right? So you want to look at what's going on in the industry, what are the biggest issues, where does all of this happen? And then from that point, you sort of want to find a path of least resistance. So for me as a lawyer, when I'm hired with my law firm, and not really with Law is Fun, but I get a client like in Croatia. So I'll have to look and generally understand what it is that's going on in Croatia and how complex is it. And it's happened sometimes that I've told clients that it doesn't make sense to work together. I'm like, hey, like, just go find someone local if this is what you're doing. But usually in the health coaching space, it's not so challenging, and it's much more and this is a really important point also for health coaches to know about law. There are two potential issues that are going to be taking place. So one of them is that your clients are going to file a complaint against you. Like if there's a problem, it's going to be something from your clients. So if it's something from your clients, what it is, oh, sorry, hold on 1 second. So I'm so yeah, sorry about that, guys. I'm here with you now. So the two risks are, one is a complaint comes from your clients. They're injured, they're hurt, they're sick, they're frustrated, they're upset, they're not seeing results. If you manage the relationship with your clients and you've got great legal agreements, I've done this more than 1,000 times. There's really, I can say 99.9% of the time, there won't be a problem. So one, where do these problems come from? One is your clients. Two is some organizational body or some organization or certification that says, hey, you're actually not allowed to be doing this and you have to stop doing this right now. And I've been hired, I would say in 7 years, like 3 times where I've worked with a health coach who got a letter. Yeah. And then the letter says, hey, you're actually not allowed to do this. You're outside the scope of your practice. You have to be qualified to do these sorts of things. And you sort of deal with it from there. And so for me, the bigger risk I see happening to clients is the first one, the former, in terms of managing relationship with your clients. And the best remedy for managing relationships with your clients is legal documents. Because when a problem comes up, if there's nothing signed, and I know this because it always happens, if there's nothing signed, she said, finger pointing, blaming, emotion, anger, refund, money, blah, blah, blah. Versus when you have the agreements, hey, this is what you signed. This is what I told you we were doing together. How can we resolve this issue or this problem that's come up? So it's a very long-winded answer, but to answer it basically is that I work with clients all over the world. In my opinion, from my experiences, it's most important to have industry-specific documents. I'll look into anything specific in a jurisdiction. If I don't feel comfortable, I wouldn't do it. And also manage the relationship with your clients as best as possible. And that's your pathway to success.
I love it. I don't know. I think the act of, every time you describe it, when I think about the act of creating this client service agreement, for example, it makes me feel great. It makes me feel better about how I can help people in some ways. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like I've thought through everything that could maybe go awry here, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't. And client, you signing this agreement, that tells me that you're also going to do everything in your power to meet me halfway. And then parenthetical is, and if something does go awry, we've got this document to protect us. But I don't know. I think the exercise of creating an agreement where it's, here's what you can expect, is what you can expect. It's such an empowering, sort of powerful step into business that I do hope coaches are getting more excited about taking.
It saves you so much money. And I'm gonna share a very personal story about me and my business. I signed like a marketing partnership deal with a really big company for a lot of money. Definitely for the most amount of money that I've ever paid for anything related to that, far and away. And they did not have any form of agreement. And today I canceled the agreement. And my biggest feedback to them, of just because it wasn't working for whatever reasons, but everyone who's listening and you're a small business owner, this is really important. I said, like, there was no roadmap and timelines, and a written agreement can be really, really helpful in doing that. Because the whole thing was, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, or this is gonna get done, or this. It's like they should have an onboarding process. They should have a roadmap. They should have dates. Hey, you pay the amount. In 7 days, this happens. In 14 days, this happens. And now, like, they're, begging me to come back because they've lost all of this money. And I'm like, hey, I don't like the way you do business. Like, that doesn't vibe with who I am. So I just share that because it's very real. And it also speaks to the importance of just like have things down in writing, and you avoid so many problems.
Yeah, and I'll share one quick anecdote as well. I had a client who this is back several years ago, before I had my agreement really dialed in, and she came to me and said, I'm not seeing results. And in doing some due diligence, I realized, well, she hasn't shown up for coaching calls. She hasn't dived into the online curriculum. Of course, she's not seeing results. She's not doing anything. But I didn't have that established that's what she had to do. If that makes sense. Like maybe it seems obvious, like, oh, obviously you have to do the thing or you're not going to see the results, but I didn't have that established. Now in my client agreement, I have that established. If you must be attending the coaching calls, you must be completing the online curriculum. Here's how you're going to see results. And, if you don't, here's the course of action that you can take. And I felt like once I had that established, I felt even more confident in the results I can give people, because I do feel confident if you attend the coaching calls and do the online curriculum, you're for sure going to get results. And now I have that in writing.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's also, it just comes back to like what we were sharing at the, yeah, it comes back to what we were sharing at the start about all this, where it's like it can be really, really complicated, and you can you not get started because it's not done and it's not perfect, or like start, go out there, try your best, and you'll learn through practice the best ways to have the best agreements for you and your clients.
Mm-hmm. I just have one more question that's kind of an extension of what Ansel had asked, just because, most coaches are doing business. I shouldn't say most, but I think most are doing business online. Like I have
Yeah.
clients all over the world, and potentially Ansel does too. And so is where you live, is that important if your clients are global?
Yeah, that's the biggest, like a lot of questions are about like telehealth and, oh, I live here and I work with people. And this is the first thing I'll say is, like, in defense of the archaic legal system, the legal system has not caught up with how we operate, right? Even I can say, as a lawyer who loves to travel and go around the world, like the way the law societies are set up does not realize what's happening in the future and the direction of how business is done.
Yeah.
That being said, the important thing for health coaches as it relates to jurisdiction or venue for their documents is that when you're getting someone to sign the documents, you want to choose your home jurisdiction to be the place that, if there's a problem, we will deal with it with these local laws in my jurisdiction. And that can be where you're based, where your business is based, where your bank accounts are based, where your LLC is based. And you have to show some connection to that location. But what that does is, okay, if I've got clients in Michigan and South Dakota and New Mexico and wherever, and I'm based in California, I'm going to set, hey, whatever problems come up, it's going to be dealt with in California with California laws. And a general rule at law is that two parties can agree to anything that's not illegal. So long as there is some reasonable connection to you in that jurisdiction, you can say, hey, whatever issues come up are going to be dealt with in the jurisdiction of my choice, so long as there's a connection to that jurisdiction.
Amazing. Very cool. Okay. Oh, and Ansel just popped another question. I'm a medical doctor with licenses to practice in several EU countries. At the start of our conversation, you noted that doctors need to exercise caution while coaching. Can you elaborate on that? Yeah.
If I could pose another question, I'm a medical doctor. Well, okay. And I just put my email there because I saw that Tim had mentioned reaching out. At the start of our conversation, you know that doctors need to exercise caution while coaching. Sure. So would doctors need to exercise caution in coaching? Because, okay, question one, are they providing medical services in that relationship?
Yep.
That's the first question. And if the answer to that is yes, then all of the regulated rules will apply to that relationship. If the answer is no, and I'd say all the time, my health coaching doctor clients do not want those rules to apply, they will not be offering medical services. So now the job is, okay, this is a separate working relationship. Yeah, I am Cory the doctor, and these are all the things that I do as a doctor, but also I'm a health coach. And when I'm a health coach, I'm not treating, I'm not diagnosing, I'm not curing, I'm helping you work to optimal health, or to feel as strong as possible, or to be the best version of yourself. And as such, these are the only things that I'm allowed to do. This is my scope of practice. And you just need to be really, really clear about that, because you do not want to make a misrepresentation. So someone thinks that, oh, I know that Ansel is a doctor, so, oh, because he's a doctor, I can ask him why my I don't know, choose random medical thing is happening, why this thing is happening. And I know that Dr. Ansel will be able to help. Whereas when you're a health coach, they shouldn't be able to ask you that, and they shouldn't have the expectation that you'd be able to answer it. But what you can do are things that are in the scope of what a health coach can do. And they've signed an agreement saying that they understand it's not medical advice. They've seen a medical professional before working or speaking with you. and that there's a very limited things that you're doing, because if you mix them up, there's a lot to lose. There's a lot to lose. Medical licenses can be lost if you're, because then they look at the standard of how the medical services are provided. Insurance gets involved. It's just like, it's no bueno, as they say.
Yeah. So like if you're going to be a doctor, be a doctor. If you're going to be a health coach, be a health coach. But you can't be a doctor. You really do have to pick your lane.
Correct. And the legal documents set the relationship up. That's like the memorialization of the intentions.
Yeah. Great. Hope that's helpful, Ansel. I know so many doctors who are becoming coaches, and part of it is so that they can work with clients, outside of their sort of regional regulation. But then they do have to sort of relinquish some of the doctor stuff, right? And so it's a choice you have to make.
Yeah.
Okay, this has been really helpful, Cory. We posted the link for the draw in the comments. So guys, put your name in for the draw, share it around, get more entries into the draw. Where are you off to next, Cory?
I'm going to Mexico on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking of maybe Nicaragua. And anyone have anything to say about Nicaragua? Aaron, any comments?
I haven't been. It's on my list for next year. I'm planning something, but I haven't been.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about that, and then Brazil's like an old favorite.
Yeah. All kite surfing?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm done. Like I've been doing it too long, but like I'm done trying to pretend I know what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm just gonna show up and something will happen and it'll be great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love following your adventures, Cory. It's always nice to connect with you. Thank you for this really approachable conversation around legal documents, and we hope to see you soon.
I feel like every time you say legal documents, you're just going to do the spirit fingers, which is great. And thank you for having me. You're awesome. I always enjoy speaking with you, and I love the Primal Health community. And join the giveaway, and we're excited to support everyone and share all the follow-up. So thank you for your time and attention.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Cory. See you soon.
Ciao. Bye-bye. Appreciate you.